The first time I ever flew on an airplane, I was in my early 20s. And I remember that the experience felt special. We got a bit dressed up to get on the flight. Our seats were comfortable. It seemed like it was something of, if not an elite experience, at least something that was important. They served us a hot meal for lunch, and it just felt like it was something out of the ordinary. Airline travel seems to have changed over the decades. And I think there are some things that both the airlines and we as passengers might look at doing differently. I want to talk about that a little bit today. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation. Or as we sometimes say, fasten your seatbelt, put your tray tables and your seat backs in their full upright and locked position, and get ready for takeoff because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. My name is Steve, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week to join the conversation and chat about interesting topics, and often with amazing guests. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. I say often with amazing guests. Today, you're going to have to put up with just me, and that may be okay. I think sometimes it's going to be just me. It's not as frequent as it used to be. It's interesting because when Coffee Breaks with Steve first started 7+ years ago now, that's all it ever was. It was just me. And I remember that it just used to be general conversations with, with the people who chose to join the show and join the conversation. Well, if you're here today, we want you to join the show and join the conversation. In fact, sometimes I need that even more when it's just me on here because I'm not interacting with anyone else face to face, but you are around our virtual coffee table. So first of all, if you're here, please say hello. Let us know that you are here. And as we get into this conversation, whether you are a frequent flyer or you have rarely, if ever, flown on an airliner, I think there's some things for us all to talk about here today. So it's good to have you here. Do let us know that you are here. And I want to get into a few things. We got several things to cover today, and I've got a lot that I kind of would like to talk about when we get into our conversation. So I just want to make sure that we get into the basics, if I might say so. I want to talk about our sweet and savory, or as Chelan would say, the charcuterie. We got several things I want to share with you today. Last week, you may recall if you were here, I was remotely broadcasting from Tampa, Florida. I was on in fact, the trip that I took last week was part of what prompted this conversation and this topic today. But I was in Tampa getting ready for an event that afternoon, last Saturday, for an organization that I'm involved with called Broader Than Broadway, that is designed to bring performing arts to all, bring performing arts particularly to young people, to students who, because of in so many situations, so many school systems, they've lost the budget for the performing arts. In many cases, kids who wouldn't otherwise be exposed to the performing arts have an opportunity to find their voice, to find their presence. And it's not, need somebody here to be the everybody drink person if you are here. It's not that this organization is looking for every student, every child to become a professional performer. In fact, that's not the point. The point is to use performing arts as it was designed, which is to bring out the art in our culture, to bring out the best in each one of us. And as these kids have an opportunity to express themselves and find their voice and find their presence and find their physical space, how much confidence they can build toward whatever their future might be. I know that was true for me in having access to performing arts when I was a student. Not a professional actor, singer, dancer. I just play one on YouTube. Anyway, I do want to share a little bit about that experience. It was really cool because last Saturday was a showcase for these students who had been preparing for several months, just a few hours. In fact, just an hour or so a week since January to put together an amazing, almost hour-long program. And you can see here it presented in a very nice performing arts center outside of Tampa. And Jerry, got your starter fluid, Dr. Pepper. I love that. But you can see how much involvement there was, just the audience showing up. And a lot of these, yes, were parents, but there were a lot of other people in this space. And 70 kids were on stage. And this is just a picture that was taken during the preparation warm-up phase before the audience arrived. And I'm on the board of this wonderful organization, Broader Than Broadway, and we had several of our board members as well as the founders of the organization there. From left to right, as you're looking at this screen, CJ Trop, who is a member of the board, Kayla Jones, Chrissy Whitehead, and Alexis Gervais, who are the founders, Lauren Connors, and then yours truly. Had a couple of our board members who were not able to travel to Tampa to be there, Anant Das and Legna Cedillo. And it was just an amazing time. I'm still kind of processing everything. And again, want to thank Sylvia and Bill Hahn for hosting, allowing me to stay in their lovely home. Thank you to Alexis and Chrissy and all of our team for making this a great time together. And just the students. Thank you to these students who took a risk. Hopefully there's going to be a video. It was professionally videotaped and video recorded. So hopefully that will be available at some time soon and we can share that. What else is going on? You know, we have another dear friend of this channel, of this program, Izzy Stein, and she posted on her website and on other places a tour that she is preparing for, that she's, I think, maybe on now. She is doing having some performances in New York and then in Texas. And she's actually going to be traveling to the Philippines. And you can find her, you see at the bottom of this slide here, www.izzystein. Make sure you spell Stein, S-T-E-I-N. It's all one word, izzystein.com. And you will find out information if you happen to be in any of the areas where she's going to be performing. But look her information up if you haven't already had the chance to do that. Listen to her music. Hey, here's another one. And this one, could have mentioned this a week or two ago. But May is Croatian American Heritage Month. Now, I know that probably doesn't apply to a lot of people out there. It does apply to me. My dad was born in Zagreb, Croatia. My grandparents were there. And Croatia is a country I've had the opportunity to visit. I personally have heritage there. And so I am personally celebrating Croatian American Heritage Month because I have that connection. If that happens to be a part of your heritage, then I hope that you also will celebrate. I was going to give you a greeting in Croatian language, and I didn't prepare one, so we're not going to do that. Several special days to celebrate this week as well. May 18th, Brandon Garlick celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday, Brandon, as you celebrate. And then the following day, May 19th, Simon Howison Crawford, the laird of the Crawford clan in Scotland, who he and his wife have been guests on this show, celebrating a birthday on May 19th. Happy birthday, Simon. Paul Ladera, he and his wife Stephanie operate a very special farm that's also a B&B in California. And it's his birthday as well. He is also an amazing chef. And so we want to wish Paul a happy birthday. Melanie Sadek, who has also been on the show, the executive director of the Valley Humane Society in California, Animal Welfare, celebrating a birthday on May 22nd. And we wish you a happy birthday as well, Melanie. And then there's another special day, a special anniversary coming up. Sean and Melinda McCormick. I had the rare and special opportunity to officiate at their wedding 3 years ago on the 20th. So they're coming up on their third wedding anniversary. Why the background that you see there? Because the third wedding anniversary is the leather anniversary. That's right, leather anniversary. Happy anniversary, Sean and Melinda, as you celebrate this coming week as well. Do you have a special day this week that we missed? Let us know that in the chat right now. Do you have a special day coming up an update, a news story, or an item of interest for our charcuterie, our sweet and savory, you can email us to let us know so that we make sure we follow up on that by sending us an email to cbwsteve@comcast.net. Yeah, that's it's always special when we get to celebrate with special people. So we're glad we get an opportunity to do that. We're going to get into our topic because I want to make sure we have time to talk about this, and probably will not be able to cover everything I want to talk about. I'm going to invite you, if you're here live or if you tune in later to watch this, I want your opinions. I want your comments. I want your experiences about flying, airline flying, whenever it might have been. I mentioned in the opening, in our intro, hang on. All right, I'm better. The first time I ever flew, I was, I think, not quite 21 years old. I did not ever have an opportunity to fly airline flight until I was in that adult phase. And it was a trip I took with an aunt and uncle and cousins to go to Disneyland for the first time. There were a lot of firsts in that for me, living in Portland, Oregon at the time. And we flew to Los Angeles. And I remember my aunt took me shopping for clothes for the flight. And I mean, it wasn't like you had to get dressed up. You know, you see pictures. I've seen drawings, pictures. You go back to the earlier days of flying, and it was very typical, as it was for that generation overall, to get dressed professionally to get on an airliner. It was, if not an elite mode of travel, it was considered something beyond the casual. I remember for my trip, I was wearing a nice pair of slacks and sort of a sweater shirt, a collared shirt. And I was dressed, it would be what we would today call business casual. And you didn't get on an airliner. And I mean, I have nothing against the fact that we travel more comfortably now, but you did not get on an airliner back in those days in sweatpants or shorts, flip-flops, a t-shirt. You dressed more of a business casual or business appearance. Now, you'll still see people do that on flights for a variety of reasons, but I just remember that the entire experience was much different than what we get now. And I mentioned that I've taken a couple of business trips for organizations I am tied to in the last month or so, one of them in the last week. And it was several flights because I was actually participating with two different organizations. I flew in to Washington, D.C., and actually every one of my flights, you fly from Spokane just about anywhere, especially if you're going further than the Western states, you're going to have a layover and change flights someplace. I went through several airports changing flights over the course of a week, less than a week. But I flew to Washington, D.C. From there, I flew to Tampa and then back home. But there were layovers and airports along the way. And I also flew on more than one airline. And I think that there are some questions to start with here. And again, I want your experiences. I want your thoughts. I want your opinions on some of this. But here are some of the questions. Has flying become more stressful, or have we as passengers become less patient? Why does airline travel bring out strong emotions in people? And is airline etiquette really about the rules and the regulations, or about awareness and respect? I want to talk just a little bit, and we're not going to cover all of it, I'm sure. But, think about some of the changes that have taken place within the airlines themselves. We've gone from having a few what were kind of very typical airline experiences, airliners that flew. There were a lot of mergers. There was the development of the low-cost budget airlines and a variety of things that changed air travel for everyone, just being better connected around the country and around the world. Now there are more packed flights. It used to be that there was plenty of leg room and elbow room. They didn't try to the insides of the planes didn't have as many seats crammed in as possible. Now, if you've flown at any time in the last 2 or 3 decades, the space has become tighter and tighter as they try to get more passengers into a flight. It's become more expensive. Packed flights, delays and cancellation, increased cost to travel, smaller seats, travel anxiety, various things that affect us. And it creates, it's part of the context that we need to think of when we're flying. It's partially the airlines. And it becomes real easy to say, well, my anxiety, my stress, my lack of being polite, my lack of showing decorum is their fault. but I'm Shalane talking about her lack of patience with the internet. Welcome, yeah, welcome to our world. But let's start with before the flight, just airport awareness, because I think the experience obviously starts there, right? And things changed after 9/11, yes, regarding security, regarding a variety of things, but it's also just the general how we get to where we're going. People who, and I'm telling you some of the things that I encountered. I'm going to share a little bit more from my experience as we get through some of this, but people blocking walkways or passageways while they're checking their phones or just standing around talking, and you have to get around people just getting through a concourse. And sometimes you're hurrying to get to a flight or between flights, and you're having to work through traffic jams that seem like an obstacle course of humanity. People who are in the waiting areas, in the boarding areas, and they've got, instead of using earphones or earbuds, they're on speakerphone. They're even doing video calls with their camera open and showing, displaying people around them. Is that, it not only is that etiquette, is what's the ethics of doing some of those things? Standing immediately in front of the gate before your boarding groups are called. They will make announcements saying, we're getting ready to board group 1, and the rest of you please remain seated. And groups, you see people from, you don't even sure exactly where the line is. If your group is called, are the people gathered on in front of you part of your group, or are they just getting there because they're so impatient for their group to be called they can't sit down? It's not like they're going to get on the plane any faster. And in fact, once you do get on the plane, you're not going to take off any faster than, if you're in group 9, you're not going to take off and get to your final destination faster than group 1. Another thing that has changed with the boarding is that it used to be, if you flew back in decades past, they would board first class, would get on first. And then from there, they would board from the back of the plane forward, which seemed like a faster and more efficient way to board people. You didn't have people clogging up the front aisles while you were moving to your seat in the back. Now the boarding groups don't necessarily seem to have any relevance beyond the first class and maybe business class that get priority boarding. But beyond that, it's mix and match, and you might be seated in the back, and people in your boarding group are in front of you getting their baggage up, their carry-ons up into the overhead, blah, 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 while they're trying to get to their seats. So you can even get down. I typically do sit toward the back, unless I've been upgraded for some reason and I'm in a special, a more priority class, but I'm usually in the back. Yeah, and the carry-on overload, people who do not want to spend time, and I understand this. I understand that there may be a variety of reasons you don't want to check baggage or go through baggage claim. But I think about just getting to the check-in process. How about just respecting and being ready when you go up to the front to meet with the ticket agent? If people anymore, what you need when you get up there is your ID. You don't need your boarding pass necessarily. ID, your driver's license or whatever else, or your passport or whatever it might be. And people fumbling for that and slowing down the process of even checking it. Sometimes maybe because they haven't flown before, haven't flown in a long time. I get that. What about being ready when you approach the TSA area? People who get up there and they haven't taken anything out to show the agent. They're not ready to put their stuff on the belt. Just a variety of things that, again, slow down that process. What are your thoughts about that? I love Jerry's comment about space on the plane. Sardines have more space in their cans. I think you're right, Jerry. Keeping lines moving, using headphones when you're in the terminal. Respecting gate agents. They didn't cause the delay. I was on one flight that was delayed for a variety of reasons. People were getting ticked at the gate agent who was giving the updates. It wasn't that long a delay, but people were getting very impatient, and they were taking out that impatience on the gate agent. Agent didn't cause the delay. They're simply the messenger. Thing about the clogging up, getting on the boarding groups. Did you know that the boarding group numbers are not a suggestion? Group 9 is not discreetly actually group one, and they will actually, when they're scanning, some people think, well, they're not going to know the difference. Yeah, it pops up when you scan your boarding pass on the way in. And I've seen some now saying, if you try to jump the line and get in ahead of your boarding class, I'm going to send you to the back and you'll be the last one to board. And I actually like that. It's sometimes shared it with a little bit of humor or snarkiness on the part of the gate agent, but let's just keep it orderly. People stopping in the aisle to reorganize their luggage, oversized carry-ons during boarding, taking overhead bin space that's far from your seat. Now, some of that can't necessarily be helped because people are if you're coming on later, now they're actually, most airlines have a limited amount of that overhead because more people are bringing on carry-on. And it gets to a point that if you're in one of the later boarding groups, you may end up having to gate check your luggage anyway. People, they give priority boarding even to like families with small children or people needing special assistance with boarding. And some people try to come up with an excuse to do that. Again, yeah, you may get to a seat sooner. You're going to be sitting in that seat while everybody else boards. What's the big deal? What's the deal if you're waiting in the terminal, or I know I'm getting on a soapbox here, or sitting in the seat on the plane that's, we've already admitted, is crammed and tight and doesn't have leg room and doesn't have elbow room. Now you're sitting there longer waiting. I know some people who deliberately want to be the last one on, so they sit in that airline seat as little time as possible. Yeah. The seat debate. You're in a row very often. If it's coach seating, you're sitting 3 across. If it's a wide body plane and you're in the middle, it might be 4 across. What's the armrest etiquette? Now, I often pick window seats, although on some of my flights, I will pick the aisle seat if I think it's going to be a long flight and I might want to get up and use the lavatory a few times because I don't want to crawl over people. But what about the armrest etiquette? I always make it a priority to say the person in the middle seat gets both armrests. At the very least, they're going to get the one closest to me, that is the center armrest, because they don't have any place else to stretch or to lean. They're stuck in the middle. That's the least comfortable seat to be in, right? Especially if you're not flying with friends or with family. What about reclining the seats? Again, there used to be a lot more room to do that. Now you recline the seat and you're literally leaning back into someone's lap and their face. What about seat swapping requests? Have you ever had somebody come up and say, I'm sorry, but I got separated from a family member. Would you mind trading seats with me? How do we handle that? Kicking seats, or even moving things, or even dropping the tray table. And because of the way these seats are designed, it's like it jolts if you're sitting in front of someone. People putting their hair over the seat back. Just thinking in terms of the fact that reclining is allowed, but it should always be done thoughtfully. I have even turned around and asked the person behind me, is it okay if I recline my seat? Or partially recline it if I need to do that. Be polite when requesting a swap and respond politely if someone asks to swap with you. It's okay to say no. In fact, you paid for that seat. Parents with children, a little bit of grace maybe. We're going to talk a little bit more about the child aspect flying, but just remember this. Yes, you paid for your space, and that may make you feel a bit of entitlement about how you stretch out, how you use the space where you are and around you because you're frustrated that it's so tight. But remember this. Everyone paid for their space. You're sharing this. It's a public, for all intents and purposes. That space is your community right then. It's your public. It's your village. And everybody there, whether you like them or not, know them or not, is there in the same fashion that you are. So extending some grace. I would like to think that the middle seat passenger, by the way, gets at least one armrest by international law. It's not true, but I kind of look at it that way. During the flight, noise and personal space. Some of the airlines now are actually setting rules about that. They will actually impose some kinds, I don't know what they're doing. I don't remember exactly, but several of the airlines have announced that they will actually shut down your video or take away your personal item for the remainder of the flight if you're not using headphones, people just playing their audio out loud, whether they're playing a game, watching a video, whatever they might be. Loud conversations. I've been on flights. My voice carries, so I have to watch it. Excuse me. Shalane and Rick, I'm counting on you. I have to watch it in any public space. My voice carries. But loud conversations where people are talking about things, especially personal things, and they're near, you're in a tight space. Come on. Strong perfumes or colognes or personal hygiene issues that are unpleasant. I've experienced all of that. Bare feet, people taking off their shoes and having their feet bare because they want to be comfortable. And in some cases, that comes back to the personal hygiene issue. Even putting their feet up on the back of the seat in front of them or through the armrest holes of the seat in front of them. How is that even appropriate in any way, shape, or form? People clipping their nails. Yeah, it does happen. Touching the flight attendant unnecessarily and particularly inappropriately. There's a call button. If you want to get the flight attendant's attention, you can push the call button, or you can get their attention verbally or visually by raising a hand as they pass by. Also remember, we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, about the flight attendants. Remember that airliners are a shared space with no escape while you're in the air. Hopefully, you're not escaping. That would be wrong. Children on flights, deal with that with some compassion and care and grace. Children are learning how to fly, especially young children. Parents are often stressed as well. Not every crying child means that it's bad parenting. Also, yes, parents should actively supervise when possible. They should be prepared when they bring their child on. If you're the parent bringing the child on, be thinking about what your child is going to need to be distracted, to minimize disruption. Sometimes, especially young children who are crying, babies and very young children, it's because the change in pressure during takeoff and particularly landing hurts them, hurts their ears. Shalane deals with that even now as an adult. So yeah, I'm sure she has compassion for the little ones going through that. Let's talk about flight attendants and the crew members. Flight attendants are there primarily for safety. We've seen a lot. You see a lot on the news. You see videos being posted where verbal abuse and sometimes even physical abuse toward crews has increased dramatically in the last several years. Simple kindness matters. Respect them. Follow their instructions promptly. Avoid feeling entitled, like they are there as your waiter or waitress to serve you, your valet. A simple thank you goes a long way when you're requesting something, when they bring you something. They are trained professionals. They are not minions. They're not your minions. Also, keep this in mind for the flight attendants. Did you know they don't get paid when they show up at the airport? They don't get paid when they get on board their flight. They start their hours and pay starts when the cabin door closes. Get that. When the cabin door actually closes is the start of their getting paid. When you're coming on board and they're greeting you, when they're getting things prepared ahead of passengers coming on board or while passengers are coming on board, they're not getting paid for that time. And their pay stops at the other end when that cabin door opens again. If you didn't know that, that might change your level of appreciation and respect for the job that these people are doing. They don't get to just fly for pleasure when they're working. They're there to make sure everything is taken care of properly and to make sure that the cabin and everyone in it remains comfortable and safe to the extent that they have control. And they're not responsible for the crowding in your seats. They didn't design the aircraft. Food and hygiene, smell factor. Certain foods, you may be in the mood to grab something to take with you on the flight, but there are certain foods and types of foods that aromatically may be offensive or may not be good for other people. Tuna sandwiches, certain aromas from other foods. Think about how what you're taking on board might impact other people, okay? Because you know how it affects you when other people have done it. Strong alcohol consumption, there can be smells with that can bother people. Even thinking about things like taking nuts, other things that might be an actual safety health factor for people. Not that you're going to have to try to anticipate everything, just some awareness isn't a bad idea. All right, we've talked a lot about being on the plane. Deplaning, this was one of the big things that I experienced last week. Especially I took a budget airline for part of my trip. I'm not going to name the airline. I'm not going to name any of the airlines. And you don't need to either. If you've had experience, you can say Airline A, whatever. Deplaning. Here's what I noticed. It used to be that everybody kind of understood. There's always been outliers with this, people who maybe don't fly very often. And there's also situations where people, for one reason or another, a delay in phase one of the flight, or just in general, their flights are close together. They have a layover and they have to get to another part of the airport. There are people who have a short time between connections who may need to get off quickly. And sometimes flight attendants will even announce that. They'll announce and say, we're going to just ask everyone to remain seated. We got some of our passengers have a tight timeline to get to their next flight, and we're just going to let them stand up and get off. Now, some people take advantage of that who don't have. Certainly that can always happen. But the one that gets me, and I noticed this on several of my flights, was that people just in general just jumped up out of their seat and crammed the aisles from the back of the plane, the middle of the plane. The protocol is you deplane from the front moving back. That's the most efficient and orderly way to do it. Doing it any other way just slows it down for everybody. And people in the back crammed into the aisles on a couple of my flights, and then were getting frustrated that they were standing there and it wasn't moving immediately. First of all, as soon as the seatbelt light is off, doesn't mean that the door is going to open. They have to move the ramp down and get it connected to the door. They have to double check everything, disarm the doors, so that when they open them, the slides don't plop down, etc. There is a time factor. Even people who don't cram the aisles, who just jump up out of their seats and they're hunched over under the overhead bins for 12 minutes, 15 minutes, waiting to get, just sit there until it's getting close to your row. Okay. It doesn't get anyone, including you, off the plane faster. Another soapbox, but wow, did I see it abused several times this last week. Don't shove forward, help other people. Sometimes you'll see someone struggling. Maybe it's a parent with multiple kids. They're trying to get their overheads out. They're trying to get their kids out. Maybe it's a shorter person or an older person or someone else who may be struggling to get something out of the overhead bin or to get organized out there. Give them a hand. What does it cost you to help someone? I just want to talk a little bit about the lost courtesy and modern stress. And I think this is sort of the emotional core of what we're talking about. Are people actually ruder when it comes to flying, or just more overwhelmed? What are your thoughts about that? Has convenience culture reduced our patience? Has constant stress shortened tempers? I was just checking something that Kathy put here. Rod says Delta just changed their contract with flight attendants so that they get paid from the time they arrive at the plane. That's what he's thinking. Anyway, they aren't volunteering their time until the door is closed. I like that. I wish that was true in more cases for the flight crews. They do so much and get so little respect sometimes for what they're doing. Listen, let's think about some positive takeaways that we can end this with. Patience does matter. Everyone is tired. Nobody is like looking forward to getting on a crammed aircraft. And oftentimes when you're flying, particularly if you're flying home after the end of a business or even vacation week, you're tired. Small kindnesses can change the entire tone of a flight. Good etiquette is mostly based on situational awareness. I'm looking for your backup on this, your counters to any of this. Travel can still be enjoyable when people show just a small amount of grace. Here's some things to just ask as we get ready to kind of wrap up, and I just want your opinions on this. Window or aisle? What's your preference? I'm not even going to ask center because I know that's nobody's preference. Window or aisle? What do you prefer? Do you think reclining is just in general rude? They make the seats, most of the seats, to recline. Is reclining rude, or reclining without checking with the person behind you? Who gets the armrest? Who gets the armrest? Regardless of which seat you're in. Window, who gets armrest? What armrest do you get? Aisle, center, who gets the armrest? What is your biggest airline pet peeve? You've heard a few of mine. What is your biggest airline pet peeve? Do you applaud when the plane lands? Yes or no? And if so, if yes, under what circumstances? I've done it a few times when it was a particularly rough approach. I've seen it happen on planes, or when there was an extraordinary delay getting the flight, or even a canceled and rebooked flight that everybody had to rebook. And I've experienced that more than once. Clap when the plane lands, yes or no? And maybe you do it if you're traveling with kids or something. Maybe you do a little silent clap. What do you do with that? Shoes off on a plane. Is that acceptable or a criminal act requiring someone to stomp on your feet? By the way, another area of grace, this just popped into my head. It's people who are extraordinarily tall or maybe heavy, larger people still have to fly. They didn't choose either for the airlines to start making seat spaces more cramped. And while it may not be comfortable for you, if you're not a tall person, if you're not a more heavy set person, you may be kind of rolling your eyes at the fact that you need to sit next to someone or get around someone. Imagine their level of discomfort in having to fly under those circumstances. All right, listen, closing thought as we finish this up. And again, I want to continue to see comments. I want to continue to see questions. I haven't been able to address all of them as we've been talking, because I've been looking at my notes, looking at the camera. Here's my final thought. Air travel puts hundreds of stress-tired strangers into a metal tube together for hours. Maybe etiquette simply comes down to remembering that there are other human beings on the journey too. And think about the fact that we get to be with these other human beings for that space of time. I've actually made connections, networking connections, just people connections by taking the time. And some people don't want to have a conversation with you while they're on the flight. That's fine too. But I've made connection with people by just taking the time to either ask a question or respond to one. We're all in the same metal tube when we're flying. We can't control what the airlines are doing that may increase our stress before, during, after. We can't control the other people in the plane with us. The only control we have is over our own attitude and our own behaviors. I choose politeness. I choose etiquette. I choose grace. It may be a struggle sometimes, but that's what I choose. How about you? All right, listen, thank you for letting me engage in that conversation. It just really was something relevant, and I'd love to talk more about some of my personal experiences on some of the flights this last week. Some of them were kind of funny in spite of some of the things that caused me to go, really, people? But yeah, we can maybe do that at some point. All right, listen, we're going to wrap it up here and just kind of share some things that are coming up. We do have some, I think, some very fun episodes coming up in the, oh, by the way, you know what I forgot to do today, and I feel bad about, I forgot to do that. I think all of our comments were hitting on Facebook. So if you were on Facebook, you probably saw them. But my apologies for forgetting to do that. I'm running solo today. My director was unable to be here, so I'm running completely solo. Not only no guests, not only no co-hosts, but it's just me doing this. I'm okay with that. That's how we started Coffee Breaks with Steve 7+ years ago. All right, listen, let me tell you some things that are coming up in the next few weeks here. I think we've got some fun episodes in the plans and in the works. Next week is a special week. We typically do take the time on Coffee Breaks to acknowledge this, and that is that Memorial Day weekend is next weekend, just a week, a little over a week away. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to share some things. We've shared some stories in the past. We're going to share a little bit next week and talk about why Memorial Day as a holiday is and should be important to us. And then a couple of weeks out on the 30th, I'm actually going to be with some of my family, some of my siblings and their spouses, some of whom are on here today. But we're going to be doing something that's become something of an annual event, a sibling gathering, where we get together somewhere and enjoy time together and catch up with each other. I feel privileged that my siblings and I remain close enough that we want to do this, and that I love all of their spouses enough that I want to spend time with them as well. And we're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks. And I'm still going to be doing the show from our remote location that day, hopefully, assuming that there is Wi-Fi, and I think there is. And we're going to talk about how families get together, whether it's a huge reunion. Some families have like a huge annual or every few years reunion where they get every member of the remote family together. They go to some huge event space or out into a park, and they have t-shirts that match, etc. And some do more like what we're doing, where we get together on a more intimate, small scale. What is it about families getting together, whether it's at the holidays, during the summer, at other times, that is around something other than just because you came from the same parentage, or because it's a holiday, or because it's a wedding or a funeral? Why do we choose to get together and share that time? We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then going out another into June, we've been trying to get this one together for a while now, and just because of schedules, it's been tough. But I mentioned up front, during the Sweet and Savory, I talked about the time that I got to spend last week with folks from the Broader Than Broadway organization, founded by Chrissy Whitehead and Alexa Karagirbase. And they have each individually been on this show before, but they have not ever been on the show at the same time to talk about what brought them together, why they feel together as sort of the sisterhood. They are best friends, and they look at the opportunity to share their experiences as actors, as singers, as dancers, what they learned along the way, as a way to reach particularly young people. They work with people of various ages, but young people, students, to help them experience the performing arts and understand how that can be such a factor at every stage of life, in every occupation, no matter what you're doing. So Chrissy and Alexis are going to be here, and they're going to talk about that. And you are going to really appreciate what they have to share. What are the topics you would like to discuss? Who are the guests that you would like to see on Coffee Breaks with Steve, particularly if it's somebody maybe you know, and you can make that introduction. You can help make that connection. Let me find out who they are. Let them find out who I am, and we can get them on the show. And by the way, now, if you recommend a topic or you make an introduction to a guest and we put that on the show, you're going to get a special prize. You're going to get an award, a reward for securing one of our episodes, one of our guests. So you may want to do that. And you can reach out to us at cbwsteve@comcast.net to share your ideas, to make your introduction, share your connections, and help us put together a topic that you might want to be the center of being part of the discussion for, right? Hopefully you're always part of the discussion here as the Brew Crew. Don't forget that we are on YouTube as well as Facebook. And I know, Rick, you mentioned this last week, that going to YouTube Live, you didn't see closed captioning. The weird thing about YouTube is I can go back in later after it has recorded and finished recording and add the closed captioning. When we are presetting the live recording, and even while the live recording is running like it is right now, it won't let us go in and change that. We've tried to set defaults for closed captioning, and it doesn't seem to always be consistent. So I apologize for that. But we do have that YouTube channel. We do want to grow that and get more people there, because while you here in the Brew Crew very often are going to join on Facebook, you're part of that core group from the very beginning. YouTube is the place more than Facebook where we can reach a broader audience who can get in on some of these conversations, who can be part of our Brew Crew from wherever they might be. And we've had people who've gone into YouTube and watched later on from so many places. Some of them have gotten back to me by email and told me that they were inspired and motivated by something that we shared. So if you are not yet a subscriber to our YouTube channel, would you go there? I'm going to share the link to that right now. I know that you can get there, but I'm going to share that link. By the way, the other thing I'm going to share here, because I know some of you would like to look at some more articles and resources, some of the things that I was looking up regarding airline etiquette, and I meant to do this while we were talking about it. But I'm also going to share some links. Top comments, I only see yours. Yeah, part of that, Jerry, if you go to live comments or all comments, you may see more. The other thing is right now we're still seeing the majority of people on Facebook. And the more people that go out to YouTube, even if you go in later and watch an episode you might have missed, subscribe, like particular ones, get the bell notification when new ones come up. And again, share that link with other people. The more people that connect via YouTube, the more people that join in the conversation there, the more you're going to see comments there. So I appreciate all of that. We want to enhance the YouTube side, and we know we've got work to do, but we also are hoping that you can help us get there with some of the things that you can do to get the word out to people. All right, listen, we've already gone a couple of minutes over because I kept talking. That's not a big surprise, but I want to thank you for being here once again. Continue to share your comments, your ideas, your thoughts. As the Brew Crew, let us know what you're thinking. You can email us at any time with thoughts, questions, ideas about Coffee Breaks with Steve. We love those. I got one today from someone that said, hey, I just thought of something you might consider doing with Coffee Breaks. I love getting that. This is not a solo show. So thank you for being here. Just remember, whether it's just changing an attitude when you do travel, if you're traveling by airline or some other public way, or even traveling on the roads with other people around you, etiquette, politeness, patience are all things that we can do that do affect other people. So please, no matter what you are doing, no matter where you're involved, do find a way to make a difference in your world this week. Please do. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Have a great week. We will see you next time on Coffee Breaks